This is episode 41. My name is Mandy, and today we are speaking with Shelley Spruit, the founder and owner of Against the Grain Farms of Winchester, Inc., which focuses on the restoration of heritage grains adaptable to Ontario growing conditions. Shelley has worked on the participatory plant breeding program with the University of Manitoba, food literacy, education, consumer workshops using Ontario grains, and product development for value-added products made from these unique grains. She has also been a partner and owner of Winchester Farms Inc. for 32 years alongside her husband as they produce specialty grains for food markets internationally. Shelley is a strong promoter of agritourism and food education. Welcome, Shelley. What climate problem keeps you up at night?
As a farmer, the challenges with the ever-increasing wide swings of climate, we're seeing the ramifications of that as somebody that's producing the food. The unpredictability of these climate changes impacts us as the farmer, which in turn impacts you as the consumer or your clients as the consumer. And I think that that's something that a lot of people have lost touch with, that the weather impacts how their food is grown and the ability to grow their food and the ability to produce food in a manner that is consistent. I mean, we've got a bit of a touch with, for the first time probably in Canada in a lot of people's memory, of seeing store shelves emptied during COVID. And I think that that was just a tip of the iceberg of what happens when supply chains break down. And more as we're seeing that this weather is wreaking havoc, we're going to see this show up in our food. We're going to see shortages in our food supply chains. You know, we won't know the implications of what's happened down in Texas and the minus 50-degree weather there, you know, for a few months out, when citrus crops and avocados have been destroyed, and it takes time to replant and bring those back into production. And then that in turn we'll see sharp food in prices. So I would definitely say that something that is concerning is the extreme weather swings and how that affects food production.
What is the solution?
I feel very strongly as a farmer, as a promoter of what sustainability and local food system looks like, is one of the greatest responses that we can have as producers and as consumers is to shorten our food chain. And I think that that all comes down not only to us, the responsibility to us as the producers, but as the consumer. Ultimately, I tell people that you vote with your fork. So if you choose and you decide and you say that I will no longer buy rice, as an example, because rice is an input grain, but I choose to substitute that for a local grain that can be produced right within our own community or right within our own province, right away that is shortening the food supply chain. And I'm not just saying rice, I'm saying, you know, any of those grains that typically we don't think about. I think we've done a really good job of educating people about local sustainable food for vegetables and now meat and these other things, but nobody's talking about grain. And grain has the biggest potential to affect climate change in the food production system, because more and more we're learning about the ability of green cover crops and grains on the fields for carbon sequestering and for improving soil health. So the more that we keep our land in grain, the more that we are impacting climate for the better. I mean, there's all kinds of universities, there's all kinds of independent researchers and studies that are really pouring into the availability and the ability of grains, of cereal grains, of cover crops to pull down carbon, to sequester not only, and then to create that whole cycle of photosynthesis, soil health, which is return to the plant, which is healthier, which is, you know, cleans the air. Like it's a beautiful system that we've totally lost touch with. So I think the solution definitely is shortening that food chain.
What's in the way?
I'm not going to be politically correct. What's in the way is big ag. Big ag's in the way. You know, it's like traditional medicine versus allopathic or homeopathic or anything else like that. It's not an either or, I don't believe, but it is a combination of both. When you have a broken leg, you need the traditional doctor. When you have a sore throat, you might not need medication. You might be able to use allopathic and homeopathic remedies and be more involved with your own healing. And I believe that it's the same true for food production, for food systems, for carbon sequestering alternative in crop production. Big ag has a lot of money to throw at the promotion of synthetic fertilizers, promotion of GMO, all of that kind of stuff. And the small independent researchers, the privately owned seed companies, the small farmers like ourselves that are going against the grain and saying, no, we don't want monocultures. We don't have that kind of funding behind us. And it takes funding to get the message out there. It takes funding to continue the research. It takes funding to develop the product. So I would say that until Big Ag gets on board, our only other way is to do what we're doing right here, is to educate and communicate with the consumer the power of their choice of food every day.
How can people help?
Take responsibility for the fact that this ownership of climate change, now that we're in the heat of the battle, is nobody's responsibility solely. It's not Big Ag, it's not Big Corp, it's not one industry versus another industry, it's not government, it's each of us individually, collectively making a decision. And the one thing that all of us have in common is that we all eat. We all eat. You know, rich, poor, you know, some of us get to choose whether we want meat or whether we want whatever, you know what I mean? But on the whole, the one thing that draws us all together is our ability to have the decision of what we want to eat. And when we make that choice daily, that we are not going to support companies that are not ethically producing food, that when we decide that we want to be a part of shortening that food chain, so we are no longer going to buy imported fruit that's out of season. We're not going to buy food that's overpackaged, that, we know manufacturing is a huge contribution to greenhouse emissions. We know that conventional agriculture is a huge contribution to greenhouse emissions. We know all these things. So it comes back to us as a consumer saying, I'm going to learn to eat barley instead of rice. I'm going to learn to cook with a flour, to bake with a flour that is produced and grown in Ontario versus a bleached white flour that comes in from who knows where, like those kind of decisions. And I think that that's something that it can become an exciting journey when we're all willing to educate ourselves on the basics of feeding ourselves.
What is the good future?
I'm an eternal optimist, and I believe that beauty comes from ashes. I believe that one of the profound effects of this COVID is it's been a wake-up call for many people. And I think that going into grocery stores and seeing shelves empty, seeing things that they're used to getting not being available, seeing milk dumped down the drains, seeing animals having to be euthanized because there's no processing plants available. I think it's been a wake up for the community, for the consumer, for the average person that just took it for granted that things were always going to be the same. And I think it's exposed how fragile our food system is here in Canada. We think that this happens in third world. We think that this happens on the other side of the water. And here it is on our own doorstep. So I think my belief is this has been a wake-up call for so many people and they want to participate in the change, and they want to become more educated and aware, and they want to, you know, help move the ship forward. And I see, even in the demand and talking to my fellow farmers that are producing local, and the demand for CSA, the demand for seeds, the demand for, you know, they want to know it's Ontario, or they want to know that, you know, things have been sustainably, there's people have woke up, people have, and now we're talking to the people who want to hear. You know, it's not like we're, you know, a lone wolf anymore crying in the dark. There, you know, the people are saying, like, what can we do? So I think that that's an exciting time to be in. You know, we've got an audience that cares now. We've got an audience that wants to be a part of the change. So I think that 2021 is a step forward. I really do. I think we're moving forward.
Thank you. That was a lovely message to end on. Thank you for joining us today. Before we sign off, we've asked our guests to share one last interesting EnviroFact to ponder, and here's what Shelley wanted you to know. Food accounts for over 1/4 of global greenhouse gas emissions, and 78% of global ocean and freshwater eutrophication, the pollution waterways with nutrient-rich pollutants, is caused by agriculture. Thank you again for joining us, Shelley. This was EnviroCentre's Green Room.